We ready? Okay. Well, hi. I'm Tom Jamar, and I'm an engineer by trade and sort of practice engineering a little bit at present. I have a company in Hibbing, small business, and we sell to a large area. I'm a sales guy. But at any rate, and what I'm going to talk to you about today is a program or a collaboration, we'll call it, that we have going on the Iron Range, and it's focused in Hibbing. So first, thanks for coming, and thanks to STEM for inviting me to share this information with you, and we'll get started. Here's what I'm going to talk about, and you guys can time me now. Make sure I have 20 seconds or a minute, something like that. Summary of the organization, some history. I think it's good to understand history of how we started. Classes, meaning in-class classes that we've got, and then the programs were outside of the classroom programs, and then challenges that we have, as we all do, and then questions, and if you guys have ideas, we're always open for new ideas. Summary of the organization. We basically have, we call it 16 members. Maybe we have a list of 18, and maybe 4 show up at some meetings, and maybe 16 show up. But at any rate, 16-member committee. But here's the organizations that are part of it. The Hibbing High School, we have a physics teacher that's really active, very key to it. Hibbing Chamber of Commerce, the executive director is involved. Hibbing Community College, one of the professors there is. ALI is the Applied Learning Institute, that person's involved. UMD, Mo Benda, who helped me do this, is involved. And then companies, Cliffs Natural Resources, which is a merchant for iron ore and produces iron ore. They operate or own UTAC, HIBTAC. US Steel has an iron ore mining company up there. Bar Engineering, and Jasper, who I represent. Like I said, it's a collaborative effort between the public and private sector. That's tricky, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We started in 2006, so we've been going on now for about 7 years. And we originally formed it to support classwork or engineering program within the high school. And we've grown from that to the point now where we're really, our goal, I suppose, is to introduce students to engineering. And engineering is our focus. The rest of the STEM side of it's maybe a side benefit, but engineering is really our focus at this point in time. So what's the history? Sort of get off that slide a little bit, and I'll tell you what the history really is. The history is that I went to China about 2004, 2005. And this is all this information sort of gets together, right? And I saw and I heard about the number of graduating engineers in China. So that's a little piece of information. Then I'm driving. I've spent a lot of windshield time in my job, and I'm listening to NPR, and NPR is talking about shortage of engineers. So that's another little piece of information. And my brother and I, who is also an engineer, were sitting on the deck one day and talking about how can we make a change? How can we help within the community? That prompted myself to talk to someone on the school board who was an engineer, and he was interested. That led to us talking to a physics teacher who was really gung-ho. And he says, you know, I'd really like to get going on engineering classes, pre-engineering classes in the high school, but I don't have a lab. So we said, you know what, we'll get you the money, we'll help you build a lab. And that's what we did. So we built a lab there for him, and it was also for the business classes that got it started. The world competition part, or I want to touch on this, well, there's 2 key points there. One is champions. We have a champion in the high school in this physics teacher, and then we have a few champions, I'm going to say, in the private sector. And I think that's necessary because, you know, a champion is I have a yellow Labrador, and Labradors, you know, if there's a pan of lasagna sitting on the countertop, nothing's going to stop that Labrador from getting that pan of lasagna. No matter how many times I say no, that Labrador is going to get that pan of lasagna as soon as I hide or get out of the room. Well, that's what a champion is. The champion's like that Labrador. Nothing's going to hold them back to make it happen. So that's what we did. The world competition, I want to talk a little bit more about that. Yesterday I had a phone call from a friend of mine whose son is going to go to Michigan Tech, which happens to be where I went. And she said that today, I went to Tech 35 years ago, whatever it was, there weren't very many students from China or India at that time. Now she said the number's like 5%. That's what we're seeing that are here, right, that are getting their engineering degrees. So I'm concerned about that. I think it's a world market, right? Our products are becoming more technical, so we need to understand the products. Just to understand it, we need to have some of that background in the STEM. and better understand the world we live in. So those are some of the reasons that we got this going. Classes I want to talk about specifically now. The first class that we started, and that the physics instructor started, was an Intro to Engineering class back in 2007. He utilized the lab, and it's a Pro-E software based. The first class was provided to juniors and seniors, or offered to juniors and seniors. It's an elective class. Hibbing School District graduates about 150 to 175 students, so it's a fairly small school district, right? So at any rate, so that was the first class that we had, and I'm going to show you some statistics on numbers, whatnot, here in a minute. 2008, we started a second class, which was more of a hands-on class. Here it was taught in conjunction with a physics instructor and also a teacher from the Hibbing Community College. And there it was industrial technology related stuff, robotics, solar, wind, power circuits, hands-on, and they did robotics competition too. So that's another class that we introduced back in 2008. You could take it if you didn't take the Intro to Engineering, because it was also an elective, but it helped if you had the Intro to Engineering class. The last class we offered now, which was 2012, was an information technology class, again with the help of the Hibbing Community College, or basically in collaboration with the Hibbing Community College. Oops, there we go. These are some of the statistics, or some of the numbers that we've got. This was our first year. That's the one class that we offered. The green bar is the total, okay? So we had about, I don't know, 48 students at that point in time. But remember now, it had never been offered before. So all of a sudden you have all these kids that are coming in, okay? So at any rate, that was that. Then the next year, we offered the same class. It dropped off considerably because now all those juniors had already taken it. They're not going to take it again, unless they had to, but they typically won't. So at any rate, then 2009, we offered another class. So now we see the total starting to go up a little bit. Same thing for 10, 11, same thing 11, 12. Well, here's what scares me a little bit. What scares me is that we didn't offer Intro to Engineering this year, all right? So our numbers still went up because of our information technology class and our FIDEERS class, but we didn't offer that Intro to Engineering class. And as a matter of fact, we're not offering Intro to Engineering or FIDEERS this next fall because there weren't enough students that wanted to take it in our program in the Hibbing High School. So that's a concern. That's a challenge we have going forward that we'll talk about a little bit more. This is the lab that we have. I was looking for my son in there because he took it, but I don't see him in this picture, so unfortunately he's not there. But at any rate, that was, I think there were 25 students in that particular class. Probably will have to be updated. Programs, which to me are what we're really involved in. We do a number of them. The first one is we call it a mentoring night. And the whole idea behind the mentoring night is to match up students, and we started with just 11th and 12th graders, match up the students to young engineers, not older engineers like me, because I can't relate to them as well, or at least that's what my kids tell me, right? I can't relate to them as well. So we have younger engineers, and these are young engineers who graduated within the last 5 to 8 years, and they can relate. They've come to a college they can talk about. So at any rate, it's an evening program. We have anywhere from, I put 12 to 22 engineers that participate in this in various majors. We specifically try to pick as majors that are relative to our area, to northern Minnesota. So we'll have mechanical, we'll have the basics, mechanical, electrical, but we'll also have environmental, we'll have safety, we'll have a few other disciplines there. One-on-one, like I said already. And then what we did last year for the first time, we also invited, I think it was 5 or 6 colleges to come in and have a representative there so they could also meet with that college if they wanted to. We also had the student or the young engineers say what colleges they graduated from, so they could also talk to them there, but they could also meet with the individual colleges, and that went pretty well. So that was an addition for us. We also opened it up this year through 9th and 12th, down to the 9th and 10th grade classes, and I think that was a real positive sign. What we're learning, and had a conversation earlier today about it, what we're learning is that 11th and 12th is probably a little late. right? Most of these kids have sort of made a decision, you know, many of them, some haven't, but many of them have. So we really wanted to reach down to a younger age, even though they've made a decision, maybe here they haven't decided what discipline, but nonetheless. And parents are key. One of the reasons that we started this whole program, it was our assumption, and I think it's still true, is that the only kids that went to engineering are those that had a parent or a relative of some sort, because they didn't know anything about it, right? So now, if we get the parents involved, they can talk to those of us who are in engineering. They can help their son or daughter go into a program. And the other thing that was sort of interesting, we tried it at various times of the year. We tried it in spring, you know, we tried it in December, we tried in November. November ended up being the best for us, and it's significant. And I'll show you this next slide. This is the number of students that we had attend over the years. This one, I want to say, was a spring program. This was our last one, which was like the second week of November. You know, it's been talked about that kids have so many things going on now. It's really hard to schedule, but what we found is, again, this November timeframe appears to be the best. So we had almost 50 students from the Iron Range area, Hibbing, Virginia, invited Grand Rapids. I don't know if any showed up. Anyway, so a broader area, and that's what we're hoping to continue with. This one is really one that we're excited about, and the champions for this are 3 young professional women. And part of it is that there's also this deal about how do we get women involved in engineering? How do we get those young girls involved in engineering? So these women jumped at this one, and this is a program that we have for 6th graders. It's after school. We limit the enrollment to 30 students just because of the number of people involved that we have. It involves 26 engineering professionals, same type of deal. Those same people who are mentoring for us are coming to this too. But here they're dedicating an hour to 2 hours. Yeah, maybe it's 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon, and they're actually doing projects with the students for an hour or so. Sometimes it can last a little bit longer. We started in 2009. There's 13 unique sessions, typically every week. Sometimes they'll skip a week. And the final day is a field trip. This year I think they're going to the Duluth Children's Museum. What's interesting to me is the first class will be in 10th grade in 2013-14. And I told you that Intro to Engineering we're not having this year. I'm not too concerned about this year, but next year when these kids are now in 11th grade, that's what I want to see what happens, right? Will all these kids want to take and that enrollment be high enough to justify it? I hope so. This is a couple pictures of one of the engineering cool, we call it, by the way. They came up with the name. They wanted to make it sound something that was cool. So what could be better than using the word, right? So at any rate, this is where they're making little wind turbines and experimenting with those. They'll blast off rockets. I was there one day when they were launching rockets into the sky. They've done little buoyancy tests, various things. So it's just a neat way for a connection between 6th graders and these young engineers, and just a really neat program. So anyway, that one seems to be working out well for us. We also do a job shadowing day, and what that is, that does happen in the spring. We limit it to, we start with 12th graders, we can go down to 11th, and that is where the students actually spend some time on site with an engineer, sometimes in an engineering firm, but most of them are on site at a plant, at a facility. In our case, it's a mine or a power plant or Cirrus on the plane side of it. And usually it's a half day, can be a full day, but typically it's a half day. 10 to 12 students a year. We started in 2010, and that's been real good. What we have learned there, however, is that we need to teach the students a little bit about proper etiquette when they're in a facility, how to say thank you, the questions to ask, write a letter after you've been done, be professional. You know, some of them haven't had that environment. So there's been some education, those soft skills that we've had to work with on. First Lego League is another program that we're involved in, not as instrumental, I'll call it. Here we've got, this is dedicated to the 7th and 9th graders. It's after school also. And if you're familiar with Lego League, basically what it is they're given a project. They have X amount of time to build this project and do research, and then they compete. So we had 2 teams this year. We have a teacher who's really running, who's the advisor, and then the first advisor, someone who works for FIRST, who is also working on the program. 2 teams, one advanced the state, so we're pretty proud of that. We provide financial support, and then we're the design review team. Part of their thing is they have to meet with the business side of it and present what they do. So we get to hear that, we get to critique it, and give them some input. So that's a lot of fun. All right. This is the participation we have in the first LEGO League over the last 4 years. You know, I don't know what sort of trend, maybe it's an upward trend there, but certainly this last year we had a good number, and I think what's happening is that we have the Engineering Cool program, we have those 36th graders, they're looking for something to do that's engineering related, so they're naturally going into this. So I think I expect us to see this, to see this continue at those numbers. Additional programs, we're mildly involved in the first robotics competition. We have 1 team in Hibbing. I went to the first robotics competition in Duluth at the beckoning of those involved this year, and I'm glad I did. It was very impressive, and I think we'll be more involved as a group, hopefully in that. I think that's really good for, again, that's directed at, you know, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders. Engineering Club, we've played with this over the years. We have in Northern Minnesota, we have the Engineers Club of Northern Minnesota, which really is, it's professionals, it's not just engineers. And they help sponsor a youth engineering club for us. And the first couple of years we had some involvement. Last year we didn't. And we're trying to have the kids, the students, really be the drivers on it, for them to take ownership. And again, it's the old challenge of, you know, they've got a debate to go to, or play soccer, or math team, or Knowledge Bowl, or, you know, there's a dozen things. And it's really tough to get them on that too. So that hasn't been as successful as we'd hoped. BattleBots is another robotics competition that's part of our FIDEERS class. So anyway, those are the various programs. Here's some statistics that we've had a hard time getting hold of, but I think we're finally there where we're getting numbers. And I'm showing you 2 sets of numbers. Our physics instructor who teaches Intro to Engineering, he had been tracking it through a survey that he would do. We'll put it at that. And I'm showing those numbers and compared to what our counselors' numbers are, just so you'd see there's some, that they're fairly close. We didn't have any counselor numbers for 2008, 2009. But my guess is this number is probably close to correct, which is 9 students out of roughly 160, we'll say, of the graduating class, right, that decided to go into engineering for college. Now, we don't track after they get to college if they stay, but we just track when they get there. Well, this is roughly when we started our Intro to Engineering class. So I think this bump is due to that. You know, I think that's a positive deal. But it hasn't grown since, right? It's held steady, basically. I would guess the next bump is when that Engineering Cool group gets up to that 12th grade and graduates. I hope that is, because that'll tell us that that's a good class. So at any rate, I found this sort of interesting. I didn't have time to do all the STEM data, and I think that'd be interesting to see also, because some of them will go in to be a physics major or a math major, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. That works for me. So at any rate, there you go. Here's the challenges that we have going forward in my mind. Some are good and some aren't. Regionalize. We're really trying to expand this beyond Hibbing, and we're mildly successful, meaning we have the mentoring night that goes beyond Hibbing, but still a good 70% of those students are coming from the Hibbing area. So we want to broaden that out to at least to the, if you're familiar with Northern Minnesota, to Virginia, that area. Grand Rapids is pretty strong with Itasca Community College and their engineering program. But at any rate, so we want to do that. Continuing classes is where my biggest concern is. We have grad standards that they have to meet, the school has to meet, so how do they fit in an Intro to Engineering or FIDEERS class in the curriculum, right? That's the challenge that they have. Funding, are we going to need funding for more equipment? So far that's worked out fine, we've been able to do that, but that's certainly a challenge going forward. Enrollment, we're a small school. Hibbing used to be, when I graduated from Hibbing, it was 470, 450 roughly. You know, that graduating class is 160. It's a lot less students. So our enrollment is down. Can we still have these extra classes with a lower enrollment? I don't know. Administration buy-in. Administrations, you know, has to meet grad standards. They have other issues that they have to worry about. How can we get them to really buy into the engineering classes? How do we sell them on that? How do we get them to realize that brings students in? That's a challenge that we have going forward, and a concern that I've got. I call this random thoughts, just things that maybe we've learned. What is the right time to influence those kids to pursue STEM careers, to pursue engineering? It really does look like it's that younger age group, that's 6th through 8th grade. Maybe it's younger, maybe it's 5th grade. I heard this morning maybe it's 2nd grade for certain classes of kids. I don't know for sure, but I know that it's not 11th and 12th. I know that we have to reach down earlier. We have conversations with the high school or our school district about doing a program in the class of 8th graders. It looks like that may happen. That'll help us out because we want that continuum from 6th all the way up, right? We don't want to lose those kids. Mystique of how difficult the curriculum is, meaning engineering. There's always that mystique about math, and it's so hard, and calculus, and differential equations, and so on and so forth. We have to overcome that. There's still a lot of students that I think can be engineers. As a matter of fact, I had one a few years ago that worked for me that became a good engineer, but he was terrible in math. But he worked through it, right? He struggled through it. Parents, we have to get the parents involved. We got to educate the parents on what it's all about. What is engineering in my case? What is that really all about? And what are the opportunities? It's not just, you know, the old thought is that engineering works for, oh, and I got to stop here real soon. Engineering is just for going for an engineering firm. It's not. It's way beyond that. And win-win, and it's a challenge. Those are for the same thing. Public and private sector work totally different. And that's what I've learned. I'm used to making decisions pretty fast. I don't have constraints. I can do whatever I want, right? Because I own the business. On the public sector, that's not quite the case. And there's been frustration on both sides on how to work with that. And we're learning. We're becoming better at it. But that's the biggest thing. You need to start. You need to do it. But you got to realize there's some real difference of how things are done. All right. Helps out. You have to have a champion. Okay, I think I'm done. I am.
Let's thank Tom for his presentation on the engineering.
So we got a bunch of time for questions, right?
You have time for questions.
Please.
You asked the question, but you can be heard.
I have to repeat.
So Tom is going to repeat your question and then answer.
Okay. Yes.
Is 2 questions, and you can take either or both. One is, what would it take for you to do follow-up beyond just do they go into engineering?
Okay.
You know, contacting the parents, having an email with students, whatever. And then the other question is just kind of anecdotally, what impact do you think this has? Is it taking kids who already have an interest this way and nurturing that and keeping them encouraged, or are you getting kids who are kind of skeptical about engineering, who never thought of it, and really taking them further on?
Good. Okay, the first question was follow-up, I believe, after college, meaning do they really pursue an engineering degree, right? And yeah, I think the challenge we have there is how do you keep in contact with that? And maybe it's through the parents. Maybe it's through getting their email address. For instance, right now, I know when my daughter graduated last year from high school, I know every one of those kids who went into engineering because I was involved with them. So I'm going to know, I know right now that 2 of them are thinking about dropping out of the engineering program and pursuing maybe math or physics. So I know that, but how do we continue that? Good question. I'm not sure. I know right now that the school won't do it. I know that they're not. We're going to need to do that somehow if we want to. The second question was, anecdotally, how have we made a difference? Have we reached kids that weren't maybe going to go into engineering or not? And I think we have. And the reason I say that, certainly we've reached kids who are going to do it anyhow. You know, they obviously just decided this is even better now. But I've had a fair number of parents who knew nothing about engineering, and we'll talk to them and they'll say, yeah, you know, my daughter is really interested in engineering. Matter of fact, on that Lego League competition, there was a young lady who was just a pistol. And she designed a shelf for elderly people that would go up and down. And it was just really inspiring to see her talk about that whole thing. And she never would have thought of engineering before. And she didn't even know what engineering was. And now she's interested. So I think we have. I think we've reached a class of students that are interested in pursuing it. Mo. Yeah, Mo.
Follow up too with the job shadowing and with the mentoring night. The students that are going into engineering say, I want to be a chemical engineer. If they meet the chemical engineer and say, no way, I want to be a mechanical. And so we're helping get them that decision.
Yeah, so I'll just repeat that for, do you want me to repeat that for this? Yeah. So the comment was made is on our mentoring and job shadowing time events that we're helping the students more refine what it is that they're going to do, from just engineering maybe to chemical, or if they want to do mechanical and realize that mechanical's not what I want, it's chemical. You know, it's helping them do that. Yeah, we've seen that for sure.
Just an observation, it sounds like you've been a tremendous champion for this project, and good for you for doing that. I think it's great to engage the professional organizations, and it's a real challenge to attract young women to these fields, so thank you for your work.
Thanks. One, on the women's side of it, it was just a comment made about the program, but I didn't point it out real well on the slide. If you saw last year, our graduates, of the dozen or so that were going into engineering, 50% were women. Actually, it was a little over 50%. Now, one of those was my daughter and her friend, you know, that type of thing. But nonetheless, it was still that number, which is real positive. You know, we're excited about that, you know, trying to make it non-gender specific, of course. Yes?
How is the curriculum for those courses designed and developed?
Great question. And the question is, how's the curriculum designed for the courses? The Intro to Engineering class, I believe, was really determined by the physics instructor and the teacher at the college, okay? And in that case, by the way, that was called college in the school, so the students could actually transfer it to certain colleges, not all. The Fideirs class was really made up by our committee. There was a person on that committee who really drove that bus, who said, you know, we need to have more hands-on programs. So, because, you know, we used to have the industrial arts stuff, and now we don't have as much of that. So he really helped the instructors work out, here's the topics I'd like to see you do. How can I help you develop those? The details were done. We're not educators. We don't know anything about that. We realize that now. But he did that. And so that was how that was developed. And I want to reiterate the educators part. One of the things we learned, too, on the engineering cool thing, the 6th graders, the first year we did it without a teacher there. We did it with just these poor young engineers with these 6th graders. And I'll tell you, that was a challenge. So we learned a lesson. So the next year we had a teacher there. We have a greater respect for what teachers do for us, right? So that teacher was there to help. And, you know, and that's another part of just this public-private thing, learning. You know, we all have these preconceived notions on what's going on both sides of that fence. Once you work with each other, you realize there's a few other things going on in that game. So at any rate, we learned that, and that's really helped out that program. Any other questions? Yes?
First of all, just as an educator, again, thank you for your work in the schools and for your
Thanks.
support as a business person in that area. I wondered, you said that you got this started by going to a school board member.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that process a little bit, just of how you got the ball rolling and got your business in place?
Okay. The question was how we started the program, and I had mentioned earlier in the presentation that I went to a school board member, and then how you wanted a little more detail. There's not a lot more detail, but I'll give it to you as best I can. So what I did is, I had a meeting with this school board member who was a friend of mine. And I basically had a meeting with him and asked the question, are we doing anything in the curriculum, because I thought I knew the answer, that was encouraging engineering? And that person also happened to run a plant. So he knew he needed a workforce. So he said, you know, we're not, but that's a good idea. Let's pursue that. So my next step at that point was talking to that physics instructor and seeing if he was interested, because we knew we needed somebody within the school to drive it also, because we couldn't. You know, there's just nothing we could do. When he was excited about it, you know, when he said, yeah, this is great, at that point, then it was just a matter of getting the buy-in there, and then we had to do a presentation to the school board. We had to get a buy-in from the superintendent and the principal, meet with them. But once we had the pieces in place saying, we're going to raise the money for the lab, and we have an instructor who's going to put together the curriculum, then it really was difficult for the school to say no. They asked some good questions. They said, what about sustainability? What about 2 years down the road we need more money, you know? And we said, you know what, build it and they will come. You know, that's the old deal. And that's how it happened. So it's worked out pretty well. And then at that point we got real strong support. On the Engineering Cool program, how that happened is we had a meeting of these women and the superintendent and myself, and he's the one who came up with the idea. He said, you know, what if we do an after-school program and you guys do it? Yeah, we could do that. So that was neat. Yeah.
Last question?
Okay.
So my question was based on, you said, you know, key involvement is to get the parents involved.
Yeah.
And I'm with the Junior League of Minneapolis, and one of our new projects this year is called Home, so hands-on math, engineering, and science. And I think we have a good relationship with a couple of the schools in Minneapolis and Ridgefield, and we've got a good also relationship with someone who's created the science experiments for us, and the parents are always involved. But that is also our struggle. And how do we, is it just educating them? Because we don't want to just do these projects for them while they watch. You know, we really want to engage them because our whole focus is closing the achievement gap, and we know if we want to do that, parents have to be in support of their kids.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, is my question is, what have you found, what works for these parents in getting them engaged?
Yeah, okay. So the question is how to get the parents involved. I don't have an answer. Unfortunately, but I can tell you what we've done, and we've started to see some positive feedback, and it's weird stuff, right? Success breeds success. So when the first Lego League team went to state, and the parents had to go with them, and then we had a pizza dinner to celebrate it, where the parents were involved, and then they got to see firsthand that we are part of it, that helped. And then they could talk to us about it. When we invite the parents to that mentoring night where we have those young engineers there and the colleges there, I think that was an added deal for the parents, because then you could find out how much it costs and all that stuff. And they could talk to, the parents could talk to us about, so what do engineers do? What are the career opportunities? That mentoring night, we show slides of the current openings in the region for engineers. We show salaries. So now, even though we know, and we talk to them about scholarships that are available, that type of thing, because that's the other fear, right? It's the cost and benefit and all that stuff. So it's just trying to get them more engaged, involved in each of those programs we do. There's no magic, you know. I don't know any more than that. I just know that it's important, and that's all I can say. Okay.
May I take that on there and make a few comments here? For those on the webcast, this is Ann Hornigold, one of the planners of the conference, and I just want to thank Tom Jamar for everything that he has done in Hibbing for this community. He didn't also tell you that the way that the Iron Range Science and Engineering Festival came about in large part due to the support that Tom was able to bring to that and to the Minnesota Discovery Center. We are thrilled in many ways for the kind of support, and Marilee Grant is at the back of the room, Boston Scientific, what a large corporation can do for what we're doing in Minnesota. You saw already today how important that is. But the small business leaders, this is hugely important what Tom is doing. And so I'd like to just give a round of applause for Tom's role in his community and in education. Thank you. And also on this team, we have Mo Benda here from University of Minnesota Duluth, other close colleagues, Michelle Ufford from Virginia. I don't want to get the towns incorrect. And your teacher here, your teacher's name is? Chris Chad, and they're presenting, both of them are presenting later today. I also wanted to note that if you're interested in seeing another presentation about a business leader connecting to education, John Ripke is here from Mankato, and the one called LEAD, about Latino Engineering Academic Day, it's twice on the calendar. So look for that, because he's another outstanding leader of a small business that has gotten involved in education. So again, your time, your travel, and what you have meant to the engineering, the education community is huge. Thank you, Tom.